when I read that Texas Monthly piece, it was so clear over the course of, I mean, that article was written a really long time ago about Gary Johnson, and several people had tried to option it, including Brad Pitt a long time ago, and no one was really able to crack it. You know, in terms of, it was so clear that there's a compelling person there. And when you read that article, what I think you see more than anything is a guy who is simultaneously extremely passionate and yet a little stuck in his ways, and that you find a guy who, I guess one of the things that when Rick and I started this process was, how do we make a movie? When I read that initial script, I said, there's a complicated individual here who's sort of having the most controlled version of an existential crisis. You know, it's sort of what everybody happens when people do go through a midlife crisis. It's what we all do. We try on different clothes and we try on different wardrobes. And what Gary Johnson is able to do is he does that for his work and somehow keeps returning to the mean, you know, keeps returning to normalcy. But I think what was really fun and what Rick and I looked at the opportunity to do is, what if you tried on one of those clothes, you know, what if we tried on one of those masks? What if you tried on one of those identities and really just kind of fell in love with that identity as someone else fell in love with that identity? And you come to realize that that identity was you all along. You just had to fall in love with yourself. And the real Gary Johnson was the source of this. I mean, you look at most of this movie in terms of the way I built Gary Johnson out, I just went all to the source material. And I went through all of his debriefs. Rick and I combed through decades of these debriefs of sitting down with real clients as these fake hitmen. You know, they call him the, you know, essentially the Daniel Day-Lewis of fake hitmen. So he was this compelling actor, and people, when they saw him in real life, would ignore him. They didn't even know he was in the room. He had this energy that almost was non-existent. And then he would put on these personas, and the people listening couldn't believe who was on the other end. They said they would listen back to these tapes, and we got to listen to some of these tapes, and they are not Gary Johnson. And that's the most fascinating part, is like, who is that guy, and why does he come alive here? And I think that a lot of this stuff, every time Rick and I were at the computer writing, we never lost sight to why we were leaning in the first place. And the reason is Gary Johnson is a really, really compelling starting point. Well, I've written scripts before, and I've sold scripts before, but this is the first thing I've gotten made. And it's pretty damn cool to do it with your hero and friend, you know, to have my name next to Richard Linklater's name it's a dream come true. Well, I think a lot of other people, when they tried to make the story, tried to contain it to just that world of Gary Johnson in terms of his function within the police department. And I think that's where a lot of things kind of can be redundant. He did this for 30 years. He did this. He was a fake hitman for the police department for decades. So there's endless amounts of stories to pull from. However, there was this one sentence, really maybe a couple sentences in the article, that when I read the Hitman article, it talked about this relationship that he had with this woman who was she was actually in danger. She had an ex-husband who was trying to kill her. So she was trying to hire a hitman to kill her ex-husband before he could kill her. Turned out to be true. Turned out to be, she was in a very dangerous position, and Gary got involved. And they struck up this relationship. Now, then the article continues to go off and continue on, and I told Rick, I said, I think that's the story. I think that's the thread we need to pull. Let's see what they're like, you know, because that actually happened. And so we started digging in to see what that relationship was like and where that went, and that's where, you know, we kind of built the story out from. Is this guy who had a relationship with a woman under a fake identity, you know, the chivalry was real, the identity was fake. And we thought, that what a fun thing to explore. And so that's really where it started. That's where we started taking our creative license. We still had all the Gary Johnson character baked into there, and a lot of his experiences, a lot of the people he crossed paths with. But in terms of that character, that's really, the love story is really where we started kind of taking creative license and really more of our imagination.
彼はプロのおとり捜査官。
I'm a fake hitman.
Madison.
その依頼人との出会いが人生を狂わせる。
He let go. You think you're Gary? Or the hitman?
彼の見つけた自分の本当に生きるべき姿とは。
We'll see.
Hitman